Okay, greetings everyone. Trying to multitask here and admit people as they're coming in to the waiting room as well. Welcome to our February 22nd, 2001 Kiwanis Club meeting. I was going to say something about the nice weather, but then it started raining again. So it looks like we're back in Groundhog Day, which is fitting for February, I guess. So as always, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll unmute your microphones for a moment, and I'll step out of the way so you can see the flag, and we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance after I admit people from the waiting room. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm gonna leave the background up, partly because it's hard to switch back and forth when you're trying to run the meeting, and also because our history moment, it'll fit really well with. So the first thing I want to do is just remind everyone about our inter-club meeting. It'll be our first virtual inter-club meeting ever. It's going to be with the Indianapolis Kiwanis Club on March 22nd. And Tom Robertson is going to give a brief history at the special meeting, and then we're planning a program on the Masters Tournament / Augusta National. Please encourage other members maybe who haven't been coming to our virtual meetings to consider coming to this so that we can have a good showing. Also want to give you a brief report from our Division 6 rally on Tuesday, February 6th. Lowell and I attended the virtual Division 6 rally. We had the opportunity to share with the district about our virtual meetings and our successful annual fundraising campaign. The governor, or the Georgia District Governor, George Elkins, stressed the importance of clubs having the goal of earning distinguished club status and to not let COVID-19 be a barrier to continuing the important work of Kiwanis. Our current Lieutenant Governor, who is a member of our own club, Jeff Drake, will be rotating off this year, and we do need to elect a new Lieutenant Governor. So if you are a past president of our club and would be interested in becoming Lieutenant Governor, please reach out to Jeff Drake for more information. There will be a statewide mid-year training held virtually on Saturday, March 13th. So that's what Lowell and I will be doing on our weekend, that weekend. And then the state convention is scheduled to be held August 22nd or 20th through the 22nd in Stone Mountain, Georgia, but they're still trying to decide if that's going to be feasible to have that in person. Also, I want to just do a quick reminder about dues. The board wants to encourage everyone to make sure you are current with your dues. If you have any questions, whether you're paid or you've paid or up to date or not, Lowell can answer that for you. Remember, we did lower our dues for the first 2 quarters of our fiscal year, which would be March through March. So October 2020 through March 21. Since we're currently meeting virtual, it's only $100 for both quarters, so $50 a quarter. And then you can mail that to our PO box, or you can use PayPal, and that information will be in the Kiwan notes. The board of directors and the reopening committee are working very hard behind the scenes to determine when we can safely meet in person again. When we are able to do that, we will have to return to our original due structure because we'll need to be paying rents and meals and things such as that. Hopefully I'll have a lot more information about that in the very near future. Okay, so our history lesson for today. In one of the most dramatic upsets in Olympic history, the underdog U.S. hockey team, made up of college players, defeated the 4-time defending gold medal winning Soviet team at the 1980 Olympic Winter Games in Lake Placid, New York. The Soviet squad, previously regarded as the finest in the world, fell to the youthful American team 4-3 before a frenzied crowd of 10,000 spectators. 2 days later, the Americans defeated Finland 4-2 to clinch the hockey gold. It is commonly known as the Miracle on Ice. In 2016, Sports Illustrated declared it the greatest moment in sporting history. Nobody thought we would win that game. Heck, nobody thought we would even win a medal, said the team captain of a seemingly ragtag bunch of college players and amateurs in the 1980 games. We were supposed to come anywhere from 7th to 10th place. The reasons no one gave the host nation a chance were plentiful and highly persuasive. For one thing, the Soviet Union had claimed 5 of the 6 previous Olympic gold medals. We never even thought about the Soviets. They never even crossed our mind, the team captain said. We worried about Sweden, Czechoslovakia, West Germany, Romania, Norway, the countries in our group. As the group stage progressed, however, the home team, pruned from 80 tryouts to a final squad of 20 several months before the games, started to generate some attention. A 2-2 draw against the fancied Swedes and a stunning 7-3 victory against most people's second favorite Czechoslovakia propelled the US into the medal round. Facing them up first was, of course, the Soviet Union. The two teams had met in an exhibition match at Madison Square Garden, New York, just weeks before the game started, with the men from the East humiliating their hosts 10-3. Right from the beginning, the USA were transformed. Falling behind to an early goal did not signal collapse as it had in the exhibition match. Instead, the team finished the first period tied 2-2 and were down just 3-2 at the start of the final period. An equalizer came before the captain found himself unmarked in front of the goal with just 10 minutes to play. We actually took it to them a little. We never stood back. We never tried to just protect the lead. We kept playing and playing. I tell you the one thing though, it was a very long 10 minutes. The USA's host broadcaster, Al Michaels, famously summed it up best as the clock finally ran down with the USA's lead still being 4-3. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. When the final horn sounded, the players, the coaches, and team officials poured into the ice in a raucous celebration. The Soviet players, as awestruck as everyone else, waited patiently to shake their opponents' hands. The so-called miracle on ice was more than just an Olympic upset. To many Americans, it was an ideological victory in the Cold War, as meaningful as the Berlin airlift or the Apollo moon landing. The upset came at an auspicious time. President Jimmy Carter had just announced that the United States was going to boycott the 1980 Summer Games in Moscow because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And Americans faced a major recession in the Iran hostage crisis and were in dire need of something to celebrate. After the game, President Carter called the players to congratulate them, and millions of Americans spent that Friday night, February 22nd, 1980, in revelry over the triumph of our boys over the Russian pros. Okay, so now it is time for our attendance prize. And so I'm going to ask our speaker to give me a number between 1 and 25.
9.
Okay, I'm gonna have to count up because you would have been 9 and we can't give you our attendance prize. So coming up from the bottom, the winner will be Joseph Sharina. Congratulations on winning our $15 gift certificate to Toast Wine and Beverage, and thanks to Mark Alberton for coordinating that for the club. At this point, I'm going to turn the virtual microphone over to Troy Lanier, who will introduce our speaker, Jared Williams.
Martha?
Yes.
Hey, Martha, this is Derek.
Yes.
We do have a guest. I just want, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know we have a guest actually today with us, Brandon Garrett, joined us from Azalea Outdoor.
Oh, okay. And we've got to figure out how to count you guys equally because you only counted as 1 in the thing and really you have 5 there. So
it should improve my chances though, since my name's on there, right?
It should definitely improve your choices. So welcome to our guest, and now to Troy. Thank you, Derek, and welcome.
Our speaker today is Jared Williams. He was born and raised in Augusta. He's a graduate of Westminster Prep School. He obtained his undergraduate degree at Georgia College and State University and his law degree from Stetson University. He began his law career as an intern and assistant district attorney here in Augusta. And in 2015, he placed his law career on a brief hold when he went to Madrid, Spain, and taught for 2 years in Madrid. And after returning to the States, he began his solo or his practice as a criminal defense attorney. In 2020, this past year, Jared ran for district attorney and became the first African-American district attorney for the Augusta Judicial Circuit. And Jared is the youngest district attorney in the state of Georgia. And so we're fortunate to have him with us here today. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Kiwanis Club, for having me. I was the youngest DA in the state of Georgia, and then I aged about 10 years per day ever since then. So I'm at a ripe 90 or something like that. As Troy said, I graduated from Westminster, and it's interesting that I'm talking with y'all today because my first memory of hearing a lawyer talk about his job was at a Kiwanis meeting when I was a middle school student at Westminster. They would have they would select certain students to come actually join the meetings. I don't know if y'all still do that, but at the time the meetings were at the Partridge Inn. And so I remember hearing a lawyer talk about the rule of threes and having the way you convince someone by hitting your point 3 times. So I started off at the district attorney's office as an unpaid intern. I used to get to the courthouse at 8:30. I would work until 5, and then I would rush to my grandma's house, take off my suit, put on an apron, and wait tables until about midnight. Eventually, I worked my way into becoming an assistant district attorney. And Troy mentioned that I went to Spain. I went there because I decided I did not want to spend the rest of my 20s in an office. And that experience, not only the language skill, but the life skills and the perspective led me to eventually running for this office. And I look back and I think about what were the changes that I wanted to make, the things that I believed really needed to be done in order for us to get to the community safety goals that we have. And they can really be boiled down into 3 things. We need to be more fair, we need to be more efficient, we need to be more effective. Fair in dealing with the community, efficient in the way that we resolve cases, and effective at reducing crime. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the changes that we're making, some of the things that are taking place, and how they're going to serve you and the rest of the community better. In looking at fairness, I think we've all heard the saying, I know Governor Deal used to say it a lot, prisons for people we're scared of, not the people we're mad at. And so that is the recognition between the difference between the monsters that we have to take out and the people that we need to help out. And so I have set a number of community safety priorities for our office, and they largely fall along the lines of violent crimes, gangs, narco trafficking, crimes involving the sanctity of one's home, residential burglaries, the crimes that actually scare us. And before a prosecutor can show any leniency on one of those enumerated cases, they have to provide justification that's based on mitigating factors and actually get approval from a board within our office. Now, some offenses don't always match the offender, and so sometimes you have a non-community safety priority case that is treated as a community safety priority because of who actually committed the crime or factors about them. And so we have a list of aggravating factors that are used so that prosecutors can elevate someone's status and approach it in a different way. This allows us to ensure that we are as consistent as possible, making sure that our sentences don't have great disparities, to put the community on notice what crimes will absolutely not be tolerated under any circumstances. And it allows us to ensure that our community safety goals are at the forefront of every decision that we make. Moving to efficiency, I've inherited an historic backlog, and it was an historic backlog long before COVID, but the shutdown of the courts certainly did not help the situation. And so we have to realize that we cannot try our way out of this backlog. We have to resolve cases short of trial. And we also need to look to the future and make sure that we don't allow cases to languish in the court system for years or sometimes even decades. So we have an auditing team who's comprising myself and other members of leadership, and we're cleaning up. We are going through and looking at cases that have been in the back of the drawer for however long and making sure that we get them moved. We also are starting a pretrial diversion program, and I'm really excited about this because it serves many different functions. One is that the lower level crimes in which the defendant is nonviolent and not a high risk to reoffend, we give them a chance to get on the right track, to keep their records clean. And we also have the opportunity to move their cases without clogging up the court system. And so the program launches in March. I'm really excited about it. The bar is excited. The court administration is excited. I'm sure the bench will be excited as well, as it reduces numbers and frees up time and resources to focus on those crimes, the most serious crimes that we want to combat. In looking at efficacy and how we can become more effective at reducing crime, the truth is you reduce crime by preventing repeat offenses. And so first, you need to recognize who is whom, who's capable of rehabilitation, and who is either incapable or has committed the type of crime where we're not going to take the risk of giving them a chance. I want to talk about that latter category right now. The DA's office is structured currently to have about 2 to 3 attorneys per judge, as well as an investigator, a secretary, and a victim advocate. And those 5 to 6 individuals form the trial team for a given judge. Now, that trial team and those attorneys on that team will handle anything from the lowliest misdemeanor marijuana case to the most gruesome of murders. Now, specialization of labor is important to the success of any organization. And so we are moving to a new model over the coming year, whereby we identify our most gifted prosecutors and assign them to specialized teams. And so we will maintain the case assignment system, but we will also have prosecutors who are focused on specific subject matter areas: violent crimes and gangs, special victims, narco trafficking, and crimes involving the sanctity of the home. And the reason we do this is so that these prosecutors can become our resident experts. It gives those prosecutors the ability to build relationships with the investigators in the different county sheriff's offices and law enforcement agencies. And so those, not only our office and the district attorney's office, but also a given sheriff's office or police agency, can work together better. It allows for those lawyers to become more intimately familiar with the nuances in the law. For instance, with special victims cases, child victims, sex crimes, we have something called the Rape Shield Law. And that's an evidentiary code that is actually very specific, and it changes. The law is fluid. And so by having prosecutors who focus on those issues in that area of law, they're going to be the experts. As well, it provides for agencies like the Child Advocacy Center and Child Enrichment to work with the same prosecutors over and over. And those prosecutors learn how to deal with child victims, how to deal with survivors of sexual assault. Lastly, it allows those cases to not be put on the back burner. It allows us to go forward full steam ahead and make sure that we are combating the crimes that scare us most. And so I'm very excited about that change. I believe it's going to be a great thing for our community, particularly as we see these crimes day in and day out. You're watching the same news that I am. We don't want to share our community with people who are selling poison, who are harming children, who are taking lives. And so by creating resident experts and subject matter experts within the DA's office, we can better combat those crimes. By being more fair, more efficient, and more effective, we can rise to the challenges that we have every day and meet our goals for community safety. And so I'm really excited about where we're going. I have to brag on my team. We have an outstanding team of attorneys, of legal assistants, victim advocates, and investigators. We're working nonstop. And these people devote their lives to the mission of making this a safer community. And that matters. It's personal to me because my parents live in this community. My grandma lives in this community. I want it to be as safe as it can possibly be. And I'm just so thankful for the work that people in this office are doing. and the way that they bought into this new vision of how we're going to go forward and make a safer community. I know that wasn't 20 to 25 minutes, Troy, so but I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have and expound further.
Okay, so if you have a question, you can just unmute your mic and we'll take turns. Or if you want to put it in the chat, I'll be happy to read that for you.
I have a question, Martha, for
Okay.
Jared. Jeff. Hey, Jared, so is the district attorney position more of almost like a managerial role where you're managing attorneys, or do you ever try cases yourself?
So I learn more and more every day how much of a managerial role it is. I was telling Troy before we started that I'm probably at this point about 95% administration and 5% law. But there are certain cases that I have taken an interest in and will be trying myself. Usually it's going to be death penalty cases, cases that where there are a lot of issues that I think it's more important that I handle myself. And so while I'm not assigned a particular caseload, I have been in the courtroom over the past couple months.
I think that's a neat thing, Jared, that you grew up here in Augusta, you know, and you're back here. Did you ever want to work anyplace else, or, you know, I mean, was this kind of your goal to be back here doing this here?
So this is the first time where the place that I work and the place that I want to live have been the same. I feel like I've always been chasing one or the other. And so when I was in law school, I lived on the beach. It was in St. Pete, Florida. And so I was like, why would I leave here to go back to Augusta? Well, I wanted to prosecute in my hometown. And then when I got here to Augusta and was working at the DA's office, I decided I wanted to live in Spain. And as I'm in Spain, I realized I want to get back to Augusta. And so, yes, to answer your question, I have always, I've worked other places, I've lived other places, but this is home, and I enjoy doing things, but I like for my, the way I make a living to actually impact my community. And if I'm going to be doing that type of work, I'd rather do it here where it matters most to me.
Okay, we have a question from the chat. What are your thoughts on Columbia County having its own judicial circuit?
Well, I don't have an official position on it. I will say that, you know, my folks live in Columbia County, and I was looking forward to being their DA. And I am, and I will continue to be until someone tells me not to. But we're still working out there very hard, and we'll just see what the legislature does.
That was a very good politician answer to that question.
You can tell I've gotten that question a couple times.
Okay, who else has questions?
So I have a question. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate your time. You said a couple of things I really enjoyed hearing. Pretrial intervention, because as you know, the way this administration is going is not toward locking more people up, non-criminal people, but in providing alternatives to prison. So I was heartened to hear that. I'd like to know your thoughts and how closely you work on, as you know, the other issues, especially for nonviolent offenders, affordable housing, living wage, workforce development, and things like that. How much of that, I'm fairly new to moving back to Augusta, how much of that does your office work with? Because as you know, this is a holistic thing. I mean, you know, there's a reason someone steals a loaf of bread, and it's usually not for the thrill of stealing a loaf of bread. And again, I'm focusing more on those nonviolent because I loved what you had to say about pretrial intervention. How much of that is it a holistic approach, or how much of that do you want to be a holistic approach? I'm just curious on your thoughts.
So traditionally, it's not very holistic. However,
I know what it is traditionally. You seem fairly innovative, so I was more curious as to your thoughts.
Yeah. So when you look at these issues, of criminality. I mentioned before that the best way to reduce crime is to prevent repeat offenses. And so sometimes that means someone's committed a certain type of offense where we need to make sure that they go away for a long time. But a lot of times those cases are someone who has the ability to be rehabbed, to get on the right track, and we need to get them there faster. And so we can't gauge success by how many convictions we get. We have to gauge success by how many lives we change. The rubric or the metric I'm using is 3 years. If we resolve a case and the person comes back to the court system within 3 years, we failed. Because what was the point of putting in all that effort? And so to answer your question, we're doing a lot on the front end to try and help get to what we call criminogenic need and address that need so that the person doesn't stay in that cycle of incarceration. So I have an alternative sentencing, assistant district attorney, that's a lot of A's, as well as an alternative sentencing coordinator. And so not only are they working on the pretrial diversion program, but we've got another project we're working on called Checks Over Stripes. And what that does is it identifies youthful offenders, first-time offenders, and helps get them on the right path by addressing those needs. Going through the program, they will have to get a job, and we're partnering with companies who will actually employ them. They will have to get their GED or their high school diploma, and we're partnering with retired educators who will help them through that process. They will have to undergo certain life skills and soft skills workshops throughout the course of the program so that they learn how to interview, they learn how to draft a resume, they learn financial literacy. So when they get that job, they know how to manage it so that they don't get into the position where they're feeling desperate enough to commit further crimes. And by doing that, addressing that and getting to them early, because it's so much easier to put a 16, 17-year-old on the right track than it is a 27-year-old. By doing it early and giving them the tools to succeed, we'll know who's actually serious about rehabilitation and who's actually serious about being a contributing member of our society and who's not. And then we'll know where to place them going forward.
Okay, we have another question from the chat. Speaking of a holistic approach, what is your relationship with the Richmond County Sheriff's Office and how do you work together?
So I have a good relationship with all of our sheriff's offices and our police agencies. I spent a significant amount of time at the sheriff's office last week working on a case that we've got coming. And so it's a positive relationship.
Okay. Who else has a question?
I have a question about, have we seen an uptick since COVID in domestic violence, I guess substance abuse related crimes, maybe gang related crimes because of kids being home? Have y'all seen an increase there?
So the past year was more violent than we would like, obviously. And so I don't know if we can attribute it directly to COVID or not, but our thought on this is we need to put prosecutors in a position to be able to resolve these cases quickly, so that when someone commits a violent offense, they need to know that we're on it from day one. And they need to know that it's not going to be something where they get to languish around in our local jail. They're going to prison if that's the way they're going to behave. And so by moving to the specialized model, I think we'll have the ability not only to resolve those lower level cases at a better, more efficient rate, but we'll also have the attention and time and resources dedicated to those crimes to make sure that we don't see a further uptick.
Bill Canto asking a question. You talk about trying to prevent recurrence or recidivism, but how are you going to distinguish those folks with whom you are going to put into this program that you're outlining versus those that are in fact going to have to be prosecuted because of the violence or the crime that they committed. I wonder how you're going to draw the distinction between who goes in one pathway and who goes in the other. And the other question I have, are you going to use drug screening as part of this process?
Okay, yes, sir. So let me start with your first question. I want to make sure all of these people are being prosecuted. The difference is what our goal is and how we are going to affect that prosecution. So the frustration I had as an assistant district attorney was that you could put someone in prison or you can put them on probation, but there was nothing in between those things that we could do. And so sometimes someone doesn't need to go to prison, but they also need more than probation. That's where things like checks over stripes come in, where it's probation plus some added accountability so that we can see who's going to rise to the top. And so how do we make that decision? It's based largely on what the underlying offense is. Certain offenses aren't eligible for the program because we're just not going to take the risk of someone who shoots at other people. That's not what this program's built for. So it's going to be nonviolent offenses. As well, we're going to screen by age. And my intention is to have an actual interview process where we can find out who is actually serious about this and who's actually serious about rehabilitation and who just wants to get out of jail, because that's we will overall hurt the program and those who are trying to succeed if people get into it who aren't planning to actually be productive members of society. And drug screening is actually part of not only the Checks Over Stripes program, but also the pretrial diversion program. It's important that because some of these crimes are going to be drug crimes, obviously not trafficking crimes, but they will be people who we know that the use of controlled substances is part of why they offend. And so we have the pretrial diversion program. We will eventually have Checks Over Stripes, but we also have a dedicated team of attorneys working on accountability courts. We have drug court, veterans court, and mental health court. And so I've got 3 different attorneys working on those to help us there as well.
Thank you. I would just add that in my experience, the way to develop a hardened criminal is to send them to prison. They will develop that within that environment. It's a vicious environment.
And the problem we have with that, right, is if you're going to send someone to prison for something that doesn't necessarily require a prison sentence, they're not going to stay very long. The parole board's cutting them loose anyway. But when they go to prison, they pick up that gang affiliation. Where are they bringing it? Right back to our community. And so we need to make sure, like I said before, and I think your point is very salient. We need to make sure that the person we're putting in a prison cell is a person we're actually afraid of, and that we're putting them there for a significant amount of time versus just someone that we can handle a different way and get a better outcome. Thank you for your question.
Okay, other questions? Dr. Cantor, you got an amen in the chat, just so you know.
I'm a preacher's son. I'm with it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Anyone else have any questions? This is a pretty unique opportunity for us to have Mr. Williams here. Okay, well, it looks like you got off a little easy today.
Well, let me
Wait.
ask.
Oh, sure, Laura.
I'm just, I know you, I'm very impressed with you and hearing all this. And I guess it does. And I don't know if I'm alone with this. It does make me a little nervous because you're so young, but you seem like you're very on top of things. And I wanted to ask you, what kind of feedback do you get about that as such a young person in this role? And, what do you tell people if they need some reassurance?
I say, look at my hairline first. But this job requires a certain level of energy. And I think the criminal justice system itself has been in desperate need of new eyes and new thoughts on how we can make changes that actually help us get better outcomes for all the stakeholders. And so I'd see my age as a strength or a virtue, not a vice.
Okay.
Okay, to put you on the spot, are you a member of a civics club?
I am not.
Well, if you're interested in the Kiwanis Club, you just let us know because we would be interested in exploring that with you.
I most
Okay.
certainly will.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Either want to yell it out or type it in the chat. Last opportunity. Okay. Well, we want to thank you so much. We know that you're very busy. You talked about the backlog and COVID, and the world is very different, and you have a lot of wonderful, ambitious ideas. So we want to thank you for taking some time to join us today and sharing your vision for the future. I want to remind everyone our next meeting will be March 8th. Our speaker will be local artist April Henry King. And I was trying to decide whether I was going to do an inspirational thought or a joke today. I looked at a lot of attorney jokes and some of them were funny, but I just felt like I might piss people off. So instead, what I did was went with doing an inspirational quote dealing with the history moment. And this one comes from Superman, Christopher Reeve. So many of our dreams at first seem impossible, then they seem improbable. And then when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable. So I thought that was a pretty great quote to think about and how we can accomplish the impossible as long as we commit our will to doing so. So everyone have a great week. Thank you again, Jared, and look forward to seeing everyone back on the 8th.
Thank y'all so much.
Bye.